and welcome to Experience Design in the Private Lesson Studio. First, I want to share my goal for this presentation. I hope it provides inspiration and is a source for ideas you can apply your own creativity to and adapt to your teaching environment. Here are some of the threads of my presentation. The idea is to tune into the student with Experience Design, using custom materials, technology integration, gamification, and the mixture of these methods. I like to create an environment that encourages creativity and performance, and enhance lesson experiences with custom video and virtual content that provide online resources for students beyond the lesson room. I want to share a website that I'm compiling, and we'll have resources from this presentation and resources that will be continually built for all of us to share and for me to share with you, and we can interact. Here it is. So the website is ripkestudio.com. That's RIPKESTUDIO.com. And what you'll do is you go to the Experience Design Private Lesson Studio link. Click on that, not the ones below. Click on this. And you will be prompted to put in a password. I'm already logged in, but the password is, ready for this? APME. Very simple. So you can put that in, and then you can see these are buttons you can click on. Let's get into it. What I want to preface this with is I have all of these hard drives are full of music education content I've created, put together, and so are these ones. So it's a big project of organizing, but I'm working on it. But I want to share with you one example where I mix these methods, because that's a real life situation that I come across in teaching. Now this one is, say for example, a student comes to me and they want to learn how to write songs. They want to learn a little bit about music theory. It's a very common request, and usually the student who comes to me asking for that has a basic knowledge of the basic chords. So I start with something they can do, and we build on it. Now, just hearing the term music theory often can turn students off, and they're not super excited about it. So introducing a fun way to begin it and study it is, I think, essential to making the lessons a success. So here I have in this game, it's a dice game. Now in the beginning, a long time ago, I actually used physical dice. Over here, you can now use online dice roller if you're doing virtual lessons, so they can actually see the dice roll, or you can have them click it. In this case, C major. And we roll the dice. Now in this game, I left out the diminished chord. I just made chords 1 through 6. So we have C, D minor, E minor, F, G, and A minor as our choices. So usually chords that are known on a guitar to a beginning guitarist. Just to get us started in the songwriting process, we roll the dice, and whatever we get for each number, that is the chord we play. So if we roll 1, we play the 1 chord, C. In this example, I have C, G, A minor, F. So somebody rolled 1, a 5, a 6, and a 4. All right, once again, you can do this online. Now, in the music room, in the music lesson room, I'd usually write their chord progression just on a piece of paper. I usually do 4/4 first, and just to keep it simple, 1 measure per chord. So we can do 1, if they're still not quite getting the chord changes, they can do 1 strum per chord, and that should give them a time. Now at that point, we'd have the student practice it, and we just see how their chord switching is going, and we try it with some rhythms. We'd find a tempo that's good, and as they're playing it, if they say they don't like a part of it that was in the roll, you can let them change it to one of the other chords in the key, and they're beginning the composing process. They're beginning to make this musical decisions. They can just stick with the chords given at first. There'll be more later on where they can actually compose their own chord. All right, so one thing I like to do is I like to take the chords and plug them into iReal Pro. It's a very affordable program, much more affordable than, say, Band in a Box. And it can be on your phone. The students can have it on their phone. The students don't need it, but they could have it on their phone or iPad or computer. And I plug the chords into iReal Pro. And then now we can listen to them. We can play along with them. We can set a tempo that's comfortable. We can pick a style like rock or blues or jazz. We can add swing to it. We can also select from different instruments, different guitars and bass. And I get the students in that process. They're starting to arrange the sounds that they enjoy. And I want to make sure it's fun to practice with. So I don't have the listen here button right now on this one. because it is a JPEG, but here is just a quick sample of that chord progression. So that just went around one time. Now what I would do is I'd make it loop as many times as the student wants, up to the maximum if possible, so they can practice along with it. Later on, this also becomes a great resource for not just playing the chords, but we can practice improvising with it, with the scale that we're learning, and we can practice other chord voicings. If we're doing bar chords, we can now try with bar chords, or voicings up the neck. All sorts of things we can do with this later on. Or soloing over chords that may change key. Now what I like to do next is I like to import the audio from iReal Pro into a recording software, and we can have the student actually play along with it so they can hear themselves playing their composition. We can eventually add other real instruments and make the iReal Pro audio disappear, or maybe just keep the drum sound or something, but so that it's really the student playing or the student and teacher. All right, let's give it a little listen to this one. Now this one is actually, you can't see both tracks here, and this is just a picture, but this is, we put the chords into iReal Pro, and then the student did a track playing the chords along with it. And this student has been playing for a little longer, so we had him do the chords and then try bar chords and do different chord voicings we've been working on. So, 5 versions of C, 5 versions of G, etc. And kind of in stages throughout the progression. The one I gave him repeated, I filled the page up with that chord progression, and that repeated 10 times. So it was a very long backing track they could play with and practice with. And I also send that backing track to them so they can practice with it at home, and we can make adjustments to it, or they can come with the new ideas that they've added to it, and we can record them again. But this one, we also had him do a second track over his acoustic, playing, improvising with some scales we've been working on. So let's just give that a quick listen. All right, so you get the idea. Now there are many other recording options. Soundtrap is a great one that's online. I've done lots of, we're doing online lessons, doing projects like this. And Soundtrap means we can really interact online and share with each other. It's great. But if you don't have Logic Pro, or if you want to sometimes just do it on something the student has, you can use GarageBand. They might GarageBand if they have a MacBook, and they might not have Logic Pro. If they don't have anything, you can just create the files for them in the lesson, and then I always keep a folder for them online. They can access these two, or depending on different students' tech knowledge, I do it many different ways. Sometimes I have to email them, sometimes I have to text it to them. I just do whatever the student is able to do. So now you can keep this process going. You can make another 4-chord progression, but this time, if it's going well, you can have the student, I guess if the student has gained confidence, like, wow, I can make this sound cool, it's just a couple chords, and I can start to now hear what it will sound like with other instruments, and if I layer instruments and add musical elements. So I encourage you to have the student now choose the chords and not the dice. They could do either way. If they're having fun with the dice and that keeps them motivated, hey, keep it going. So we can add now that we edit the file, the iReal Pro file. We will add the next chord progression, the one they compose, and then you can decide, do we want the first progression to go 4 times or 2 times or once, and we can actually start arranging it, kind of like a verse and chorus or an intro and verse. You can keep this project going as long as you want. I mean, you can go way down the road. You can make an album. You can do all sorts of things with just one track. But I would say, use your intuition and like I said, tune into the student and kind of see if they're excited about it, keep it going. If they're starting to get, after a while, they might sour on it. It's not so much fun. They want to do something else, and you can change it up. All right, at this point, I think it is time for a quick intermission. And we're back. Now, another thing I like to do is if that is a kind of a too cold of a start for them, we start explaining the theory. We can use the Hook Theory website, hooktheory.com, which is free. So I always like to relate it to something the student is interested in. So if it's if they're into Mumford and Sons, I could find The Cave, and it gives me the progression. It gives me the Roman numerals. I can select it so the Roman numerals are up here, and the chord name letters are up here, C, and the Roman numerals are down here. I'm really trying to stress that this is just a formula, a mathematical formula that applies to every key, and it's the basis for most songs, or it's the basis for all songs. It's just we can start to break the rules, and we can get into that later. Now, when I find examples, sometimes if I'm in the lesson, we're doing it on the fly. They look through the list, they go, oh, I like Adele, and I pulled up. There are some slight things that I try to avoid because they can just make it confusing. So if I have a progression that's maybe adds another chord in they don't know, or just there's something about it that looks strange, has some passing chords and whatnot, I'll just avoid those for now and try to keep something that looks simple. So these are great because this just goes C. I mean, it goes right through just the chords that we were doing. Up here in this list was Adele's Someone Like You. Great song. I clicked on it, and here's how it came up. Still, it's a 1 5 6 4 progression, but it's in A, right? And now that can be really confusing. Like, well, I thought we were talking about C. Our chords were C. So you just click the key button and you select the key you want, and it'll move the audio. You can play and listen to it. It's not the actual song, but it's computer audio, and you can play it, and now it's going to be in the right key. You can hear it play. And actually, some of the melody and stuff in it too. You can see the melody moving around. All right. Now, if that happens, and say you find that student is loves the Adele song, that's what they want to use, and we can use that as a launching point. Instead of rolling the dice, we can use the Adele song as a launching point. I got it in the right key. It makes sense as far as the chords they know, and there's not too much crazy stuff in it. But say they don't like playing along with the computer audio. I mean, it sounds okay. I can make it sound much better once I get into Logic, and I can change some things around. But if they really just love the Adele version and they want to hear her voice, we can put the audio for the actual track, the Adele track, into a program like Transcriber. Any program that you can transpose audio or change or shift it, pitch shift it. So I would just put it into Transcribe. I would move it from A to C. And you might experiment. Going up sometimes sounds too high, and going down sometimes too low, and maybe that's what you're going to get. But just find out which one sounds the best. It's not going to be perfect, but it will be the song that they're playing along. Now, sometimes even using this method, it still can be confusing, just the concept of it, that because maybe they've read a bunch of other music theory stuff, and all that stuff's still in their head. So they have all these terms like, well, it doesn't quite make sense, or the Roman numeral system, or whatever it is. We can explain the concept in a simpler way and try to relate it to how the student can understand it. So, like, for example, you could just explain that it's like a palette. It's a palette. We have 6 colors on the palette, and we can choose to start with red and go to green. We can choose where we want. We can choose from that palette and make our own audio and sound painting. Now, sometimes you might have a situation where maybe the student needs a little help in maybe the technique of switching from chord to chord, or they can't quite do it fast enough yet. So sending them home with the backing track might be a little frustrating unless we slow it way down, and that might be frustrating too, because it's sometimes too slow is even more difficult. So depending on the age of the student too, that might work for some, might not work for others. But you could send the student home with a little game they can play. So instead of saying, we'll practice 10 minutes a day, you can say, well, go from start to finish in this game once a day or twice a day. And with some of the things on here, like go backs and go back start, they actually will get a pretty decent repetition amount. And you just, whatever you type in these squares, you just pick what makes sense for the student, what makes sense for their level and what they're doing right now. So we'll often do this in the lesson room one time, just to see if we can make it to the finish, and then they have their practice idea for the week. So say they roll in the lesson room, what I do is I take a guitar pick with a little piece of tape, and sometimes I'll play against them. That makes it a little fun. And then while I'm doing my turn, I'm actually really doing the most teaching, because I'm asking them to pay attention if I'm doing it right, am I doing it wrong, how, making them really listen while I'm playing and watching. and I might do a couple things wrong on purpose, and I'll ask them, was that right? Did it sound right? And I want to make sure they're into it, and if I did something wrong, they can tell me. But they can roll and say they get 2. I've missed square 1 there, but say they get a 2. We play A minor to G chord 10 times, and that gets them going for playing chord progressions in C. As we go, we might actually alter some of these. If we're playing the game, it just doesn't make sense, we can change some of them. I usually write them in pencil as we're going, and I ask the student to pick some too. But we have some things that are like free choice. Like if you hit that, they can maybe play Joan Baez song they're working on, or a Nirvana song, or whatever they're playing, Led Zeppelin, Adele. So the goal is to get to the finish. And if we're playing in the lesson room against each other, we see we can get to the finish first. Other things you can send them home with are other practice, like just the ways you present playing and practicing. So this would be, I'm going to start with this one. This one is a practice pathway sheet. So I would just fill these shapes in with the stuff I want them to work on for a particular project or in general, or I'll mix, like we're going to put some stuff on for this project and stuff you just should be working on always. And they can choose their own path. But the idea I would say is try to choose a different path every day. Don't do the same path. So if they want to make it a quick practice routine, they can just go like this, but you can go any direction. You can follow any green line and get to the finish. And you can say, well, go through it. You can say go through it twice a day, once a day, whatever you want. You can be very creative with that.
This is the